Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Hillhouse, and I'm an independent educational consultant and a retired military officer. And we are here today to talk a little bit about some areas we work in often, guiding military students to the service academies and ROTC. My background is as a career Air Force officer. So I spent over 26 years, most of that time guiding and encouraging young people to become officers, to develop their leadership, and then retain them in the military. And today I'm an IEC specializing in this. Scott?
Thank you all for joining us today. And I'm Scott Hampton, and I'm a graduate of West Point. And then I was commissioned in the Army and the infantry, served as an infantry officer for 25 years. Part of that service, I spent 2 tours at West Point on the faculty in the Department of Behavioral Science and Leadership. So I've got to see the cadet experience personally, and then on the other side of the desk as a faculty member. After the 25 years in the Army, I went back to high school to be the director of college counseling for 10 years and also teach high school students. And I love working with the families. So I'm currently an IEC, retired from the high school. And the last 4 years, I've been working with families to help students get to college and these academies. Again, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. And we're sorry that you're not able to be with us in person, but our contact info is at the end. And so feel free to reach out if there's any way we can help. All right. So when I was teaching ROTC and also at the Academy, when we would do visits to high school and talk to counselors and be at recruiting events, these are the young people that we would look for. So if you are in your school or in your practice and you see students who are just really engaged and enthusiastic, students who not only are smart, but active and want to make a difference in the world, this is who could be a good fit for this. Not just those students who are athletes, not just leaders in their families and their communities, but also in the classroom, kids who set really high standards for themselves and really raise the bar in those around them. So we don't look for kids who are just athletes or just scholars or just leaders. We're looking for that whole person.
These are the 3 academies most people think of when they think about service academies. You have the Army at West Point, the oldest, the Naval Academy in Annapolis, and then the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. All 3 have great missions, great purpose to develop future leaders to lead our military services. And they all have about 4,000 students and just provide a great experience. And Lisa will continue with the other academies.
So here's the 2 lesser known ones, Coast Guard Academy in Connecticut and the Merchant Marine Academy in New York. These are also, some have been around longer than others, but these tend to be about 1,200 to 1,400 cadets or midshipmen, obviously maritime focused, just like the Naval Academy, and they tend to be D3 sports, except for a few areas like rifle and sailing. I think that so many people don't look at these two schools because they know the big 3 from Division I sports, or just because they're these larger services, but these offer some really great opportunities for students who want that smaller experience. What's really cool about the Coast Guard, they do not require congressional nominations, so that helps kids get into an academy with one less step. And then the Merchant Marine Academy is there to build our maritime fleet service, but also you have the opportunity, unlike other academies, to commission and go active duty into any branch. And so that's something unique about them. When you think about life at a military service academy, it is going to be very different than going to USC or University of South Carolina. For one, every student is going to have that bachelor of science degree. So whether you major in behavioral science or English or aerospace engineering, you will have a Bachelor of Science degree. They are STEM focused, and so every freshman is going to have calculus and chemistry and physics. So you really need to be prepared for that rigor. Additionally, you're going to have a heavier course load than at a typical college. Also, as I mentioned before, every student is an athlete. And so whether you're doing your D1 or D3 sports or club sport or intramural, each student's going to be active and involved because of the leadership and teamwork and communication skills that builds. At an academy, the very beginning, you're going to start June or July after graduating from high school, and you're going to be training most of the year. You will have those vacations like Thanksgiving and winter break and spring break. But during the summers, in addition to your shorter vacation period, you will have time where you're serving and training in the fleet, doing study abroad, all sorts of different programs. And then the end result is that you commission and serve as a military officer.
As independent consultants, we look at profiles all the time and share with our families. So here's some typical profiles of those numbers for the academies. However, this is just one small part of the entire holistic review that the academies go through. Yes, the numbers are important, kind of like but also at the other things are so much more important. So it's a much more comprehensive evaluation that Lisa will share some of those details with you. Some qualifications. You see the age window there. If you're over 22, you can't start the academy. You cannot be married. You cannot have any legal dependents. Academically, again, those numbers, that student profile, have to be very, very strong and competitive like other colleges. However, this holistic review of the extracurricular and character, yes, these are also important to all colleges, but I think they're emphasized even more, especially the leadership aspect, because all these institutions are designed to develop leaders of character to serve our nation and protect us. And then the last step there, I know of no other college that requires you to go get a medical, your height, your weight, your blood test, and all that, your hearing, your vision, and then go take a physical fitness test, which can be quite extensive depending on the academy. And we'll go over that in more detail later, but these are all very important. And what makes it very unique compared to all the other colleges that we help students attend. The timeline, this is pretty straightforward. It's an example from the Naval Academy, but the theme is start early. I can remember meeting 8th graders and 9th graders who would go to the academy day that the congressman would host in our community, and just starting to see what that is involved, what's involved in that whole process. But by junior year, you have to start that pre-candidate questionnaire. And then by the summer between junior and senior year, the congressmen and senators typically want everything. The letters of recommendation, the application, they want all those files typically completed by the end of the summer. And then they review them and set up nomination meetings and interviews and so forth. So you can update scores, you can update physical fitness test scores to a certain point, but the key is start early and keep putting your best foot forward in this whole process.
And we're going to talk about ROTC a little bit later, which is another commissioning option and a bigger commissioning option in terms of sheer numbers. But if a student chooses to apply to an academy or maybe more than one and an ROTC scholarship, they're doubling their workload to prepare for college. So that's why, as Scott said, that summer is so important. We want to do everything we can before they roll into their senior year. So nominations, this is one area where there's a lot of confusion. So I've run 11 different nomination boards and sat on others. Scott has been on a bunch too. And This is an apolitical process, so you do not have to be a Democrat if your senator is a Democrat to get a nomination. You do not need to make a contribution to a political campaign. Those are not what this is about. Each member of Congress can have 5 students at an academy at one time. Remember, we said the Coast Guard does not require nominations. And for each opening they have, they can nominate 10 students. And so I might get a nomination, but not get medically qualified. So that doesn't get used. Scott could get a nomination, but he could choose to go to a different academy. So the nomination may not be used there. In some areas of the country, like the Maryland, Virginia area, it is extremely competitive to get a nomination. So students want to apply to every available resource, which would be their congressperson and 2 senators. And you can also apply to the vice president as well. But there's also a group of students that have a chance to get a nomination elsewhere. So if you are a military dependent, if your parents served 8 years or more, you could get a presidential nomination in addition to applying for these other ones. If you are in a JROTC honor unit, if you are a college ROTC cadet, you can also get a nomination. And the academies have a few extra as well. And so don't let not getting a nomination stop your application process. If the academy is really excited about you and you've done everything you can to get one, they'll certainly try and help you if they can. And then, as Scott mentioned, different parts of the country have different timelines, but some nominations are due in the summer, some are going to be due in the fall, depending on where you live.
These are some of the academic requirements that we see for all colleges, the 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 1. However, the academies are really, again, that STEM focus. So they like to see that performance in the STEM topics, because you're going to have to take those courses at the academy. And some academies will actually require a science or math teacher to write one of the recommendations. Foreign language, like all colleges, if you have more than 2, that's great. The more, the better. But it's having taught there at the academy, as Lisa mentioned, you can major in behavioral sciences and social sciences, but you will be taking those STEM courses in physics, chemistry. I can remember the day electrical engineering and thermofluid dynamics. It's very, very exciting, but it's all that broad breadth of an educational experience.
Exactly. In terms of the technology, people often say, does that mean like taking Word or Excel? We're actually talking about more programming languages. So absolutely, if you can fit that in. If you aren't able to fit that in because maybe you're doubling up on science and math because you might have an engineering or STEM focus, then what can you do to teach yourself technology? So can you take a coding course online? Can use Coursera, et cetera. Okay, so the evaluation process. This is going to vary by academy, but it's important to know that most academies will use some numbers such as GPA and course rigor and test scores to get a numerical number, but yet all academies are going to look at the whole person concept as well. And so as Scott said before, they're focusing on a leader of character. You just can't be a 4 or 5 GPA. You just can't be a great athlete. You need to be doing all these different things. So academics, like other colleges, are going to be the most important thing. We've already talked about what would be a good preparation track for that. It's important to know that things change constantly in college admissions. So while some academies are requiring the writing section, that could change with the SAT writing being canceled. So be sure and check. Don't just go by what you hear today, because that could change tomorrow. In terms of that curriculum, again, college prep. And then the academies will look at, what do all those teachers say about you? What does your counselor say about you? They are going to want to see your resume. They want to see what activities you've been involved in. And there's certain things that many students who go to academies do. Maybe they've been in Girl Scouts and they've worked up to the Gold Award, or Eagle Scout for Boy Scouts. Maybe they've been in Civil Air Patrol or Sea Cadets, and they've earned different award levels and become a cadet officer in those programs. Many of them have volunteer time, and I really encourage my kids to learn more about the military by focusing your volunteer service with a military focused organization. Also, if students can have employment, we know that many kids don't work because they don't have the time today. And that really makes a difference in an application too. I have students who are volunteer firefighters. I have students who are in search and rescue. Sometimes they're going to do non-academic things such as scuba diving or learning how to sail. So think about where you want to wind up. Scuba and sail would be great for any of those maritime forces. Maybe you want to become an Air Force pilot, so working on your pilot's license. Again, just kind of focus those activities on the career that you want to pursue. And then, as Scott talked about before, that physical fitness assessment is really important. Every student is not going to be a varsity football player or the team captain for club soccer, but they do need to be participating in something, whether it's martial arts or fencing, that may be a little more solitary and on them, or it could be running triathlons. But again, they need to have that fitness.
Back to the physical fitness aspect, this is something that the high school students must present as part of the application process and take this fitness exam. And typically a coach can give it, a physical education teacher, a local representative for the academy. But this exam, as you can see, push-ups, pull-ups, get on your knees and throw a basketball as far as you can, and shuttle run, 1 mile run. So at the website, it'll show you the specifics of how to perform these events, but you have to go out and practice it. It's when you take it cold, you're just not going to do the best. So you want to practice. It's amazing. You get the technique down and you can throw that basketball a lot farther than your first time trying it. And every repetition, every foot, every less second that you run is more points to a maximum number of points, which then makes you much more valuable to the academy with that high level of physical fitness. So really just can't emphasize enough to practice that through the summer and be prepared to take it and retake it if necessary to get into the best possible zone that you can physically to show the academies.
I was telling Scott this morning that this year I'm having all my students take a practice test with this test that they're going to be needing with their athletic director before summer break, and then track their progress over the summer. Because many of my students are varsity athletes and they think, how hard is this test going to be? And then they go take a practice test and they're not going to pass it. They're a little bit shocked by that because they think they're 17, they could do everything. The other thing is, since so many of these candidates are athletes, we know athletes are constantly getting concussions and breaking a finger and spraining their ankle. And so if you delay taking this test until your sports season in the fall when you're at your best, if you get injured, you could miss the timelines to apply to an academy. So please don't delay. As Scott mentioned, there's also the medical evaluation. So this is called DODMER, the Department of Defense Medical Evaluation Review Board. If you apply to an academy, when your application reaches a certain point, they will send you for the DODMER. That varies from academy. It could be at the 50 percentile mark of your application or the 75th. When you go, you are going to fill out a lengthy survey online, then you're going to have a vision exam and then a doctor's exam. 25% of people fail the DODMER. And so it may be because they didn't realize they have an irregular heartbeat. Maybe it's because they're taking medicine for antidepressants. It could be they have night blindness and it wasn't diagnosed before. There could just be lots of different things. You'd be really surprised. When you go for your exams, you either meet the standards, you don't meet the standards, or you have that remedial status. And that's where the academies go and say to DODMER, yes, we're interested in this competitive student. Please file a waiver, please get more information. And so this can take, a month to get an appointment. It could take a month to process your results. Every academy is different. Every commissioning source has a slightly different standard. So I could medically qualify for Coast Guard, but maybe not for Air Force ROTC. So each academy, makes that decision of what they're willing to take a risk on if you need a waiver. But again, if you have something like I had childhood asthma, they're going to want to have you take some tests about that to make sure you don't have it anymore. And I've seen kids that have spent 4, 5, 6 months getting medically cleared, and you have different timelines for every academy, but you could run out of time if you don't start this early. Here's just a couple examples of things that disqualify kids. So having asthma as a teenager, lots of kids have surgery for orthopedic injuries, but it just depends the severity of it. And are you back to 100% or better? You cannot be on medication for ADD or ADHD. You have to be off it for a year to get medically cleared. So that's a very common question. What's really important is that a student's at the place where they've made that decision with their doctor and their parents. And if they're getting off the medication, they're confident that they can perform well. Because if you go off it and you're not performing well, that's going to impact you for college. So sometimes a student may not medically qualify for an academy, but can enroll in ROTC and get medically qualified and maybe get a scholarship and continue that journey. So it is not just a one-time thing. It's not in a vacuum. They're also going to look at, do you have eating disorders? Do you have dental issues? So something like needing to have a tooth implanted could be medically disqualifying. Still having braces can be medically disqualifying. Most importantly, don't take yourself out of the running. Just go and be honest and be accurate.
Here, I'd like to touch on some of the great things that happen at the academies during the summer. And it begins before this academic year even begins, right at the end of high school, at the end of June, or very early in July is when the accepted students will go to the academy and participate in their cadet basic training, cadet basic orientation. Each one labels it differently, but it all has the same purpose to basically help the student transition from a civilian lifestyle into a very disciplined, structured military lifestyle, and also to start that focus on teamwork, cohesion, looking at the cadet leaders that are leading you and exposing them to the basics of the military branch that they're actually at, like in the Army for West Point, in the Navy, the seamen and the airmen for the Air Force. So it's a wonderful orientation. It's as an athlete myself, physically, it wasn't overly demanding. The demands are on the amount of things they put at you and throw at you to try to do and to also memorize so it's just a lot of things to manage and juggle. And some students, they realize this isn't for them. And we'll talk later about how you can prevent that. But those numbers are very low now, whereas in the past, they used to be very high. If you talk to older graduates, they'll tell you how this was a process that many people left. But nowadays, they're so much better at helping the students integrate and being very, very supportive. And they want to keep them there to develop them into leaders of character. But it's a great orientation. But don't plan on a long summer because it's going to be a short summer that summer and every summer thereafter.
The world's most fun freshman orientation, right?
Yes, yes. That first year you get oriented to the military lifestyle, but that second summer and the third summer and the fourth summer, talk about internships. You basically are exposed and get to participate in the professional military applications that each academy provides. Like I was in the Army at West Point, so I was able to fire tanks, fire artillery cannons, ride in helicopters. They didn't let us fly the helicopters, but we rode in the helicopters to get exposed to aviation. Go through the woods and as an infantryman throughout all hours of the night and day and many days to be able to do what the infantrymen do. And that's what I liked. So that's what I chose several years later. but you really get exposed to everything, like doing an internship. And it's just a wonderful way to figure out, what do you want to do when you graduate from college? So that's after that second summer and that orientation to the specific military branch you're looking at, the third and fourth summers, now you're going to practice leadership by training and inspiring other cadets. I served as, at that first basic orientation, I was a squad leader for freshmen coming in to help motivate them and inspire them. And then another summer, the supervising that field training. But then also, I was able to go out and serve as a lieutenant, like a third lieutenant, and lead 30 soldiers in an infantry unit in the state of Washington. But you could go all over the United States and lead soldiers in the branch that you're interested in. But also, that's all military. There's some great academic opportunities that they provide where to enrich that experience abroad. You could be working at an embassy with that organization at an embassy overseas somewhere. You could be working at a research lab facility that kind of links to your interest in your major and academically, and you could go down and work at the Army Research Lab or a special elite college. And it's just so many, the sky's the limit. I mean, and if you want to do something, it's kind of like the regular colleges, how they have all these clubs. If you want to start a new club, you start a new club. So if you want to look and explore something different, you can do that as well. But it's amazing. I've had students go to other countries, and then the ambassadors or the presidents of those countries come visit the academy, and that cadet would escort that president that they met while they were there overseas during their summer experience. So now that summer experience, there's still going to be about 3, sometimes 4 weeks that you will have some personal time with your family. It may not be all at one time. It may be a week here, 2 weeks there, but that summer is pretty packed with really great, fun, exciting, amazing opportunities. And here are some opportunities for the high school students to take advantage of as early as 9th grade, 15 years old. The academies rank typically in the top 5 in the country in many engineering fields for undergraduate studies. So the Navy even starts with 9th, 10th graders, 11th graders. They have this great STEM camp. You live on campus, you learn about all the different aspects of STEM, including nuclear engineering. So and each academy has this summer leadership seminar after the 11th grade, which is very competitive to apply for. Typically around January, it opens and they close it in March. But this is a 1-week basic test ride of that academy. You live on campus and you kind of live like a cadet in the barracks, and you get to go experience academic classes from various professors in various departments, but you also get to experience some military things. And it's just a 1-week great experience that in your mind as a student will confirm whether this is really what you want to pursue and do this extensive application process, or you decide you don't want to. Like my daughter, she tried the Air Force Academy for a week. She greatly appreciated the experience, but at the end of it, she said, I don't think I want to go to an academy at Air Force. I'm going to try a different college where I can explore my other interests. But it's great to have that decision made before you go through all these very in-depth application process.
Go ahead, Scott.
The prep programs that some students don't quite get admitted after this extensive application process. They're up there, but they're just not up there at the top level that the academy wants. So they may offer them to spend a year at a preparatory program. The big 3 all have prep schools on the campus. So you spend a year at a prep school on the campus, and doing a lot of math and English writing. And then at the end of that year of preparation at that sponsored academy prep school, your chances of getting admitted to the academy are really, really high. Now, some of the academies like the Air Force also offer some alternative routes that you can go versus just the prep school itself. But you could also start your first year at ROTC at a college like Virginia Tech, any college that has an ROTC program, and you can apply for the academy. But regardless of your academic credits, let's say you have a sophomore credit load already, you're going to start as a freshman at the academies.
It transitioned to ROTC. Okay, so I was a cadet in Air Force ROTC at Holy Cross, and then I taught ROTC at Cal. So like Scott, I saw it from both aspects. This is a really tremendous program for young people. And so they are full-time students at civilian colleges. So that could be Rutgers, that could be University of Wisconsin, and they are doing a part-time leadership program. So they may have physical fitness training 3 mornings a week before class. They may have one morning or one afternoon or evening where they're doing their leadership lab with the other cadets or midshipmen. They're also going to have academic classes too, focusing on the branch they want to go into. So if you want to go into the Navy, you're going to have navigation classes. You're going to have the history of sea warfare. You're going to have advanced studies in leadership. When you go into ROTC, what's important to know is that you have this backup. So if you don't get into an academy or you don't get appointed to a preparatory school or a foundation scholarship, you can, if you are good moral character, physically fit, full-time student at an ROTC school or crosstown school, you can walk on to ROTC and compete to get a spot to commission. It's important to do that early because it is a 4-year program. And in some cases you could do it for 3, but like if you went to them your 4th semester of college, they may say that would add on to your graduation time. So if you're at all unsure about it, check it out early. Also in ROTC, we would do things like community service, such as Habitat for Humanity. We would do volunteer service at the school, such as at Cal. We would do security for football games. We would also do base visits. We went to go see the Thunderbirds and talk to the Red Flag, the people who do the like a Top Gun school for the Air Force. We would bring in guest speakers. We'd have military balls and field days. We would also do things like go rappelling with the Army off of the buildings at school, or we would do, paintball against the Navy midshipmen. So it's a really great way of seeing, what the military is about. And you do have time to decide before you commit. I mentioned that this is going to be that co-op experience in a sense, like you're practicing what you're going to do like you would at the academies, but you're also going to have that community and that camaraderie, which I think especially at a big school like a Cal or UCLA is going to help because it's going to help, build those connections for you. When you're in ROTC, you get academic and leadership advising every semester from an officer in the program, and then you have cadet mentors. So you are on track to graduate. They're making sure that you are staying focused on that goal. And as I mentioned, ROTC is the biggest commissioning source. And then at the end, besides your summer training opportunities, you could intern at the Pentagon, you could study Mandarin in China, you could be doing research at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base on engineering topics. You do graduate, get commissioned as a second lieutenant or an ensign, and go active duty. For Army, it's a little bit different process. You could go active duty or reserve or guard. Really quickly, before we run out of time, I want to talk about the scholarships. So Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, ROTC do offer scholarships. High school students can apply for those. Those scholarships open the spring of their junior year. You should apply early, but when you are most competitive with grades, test scores, activities, and leadership. And those scholarships can be 4 or 3-year scholarships. It depends on the branch. They could be partial or full tuition, and they also include money for books and a living allowance. There are many, many schools that will supplement those scholarships or provide room and board or one or the other. So that's just really important to check on that. And like the academies, this admission and these scholarships are going to be merit-based, not need-based. Like the academies, most of the scholarship money would be more STEM focused, but you could have any accredited major. The last thing with ROTC, there's a program called Senior Military Colleges, which would be a step up in intensity from ROTC, but a step down in intensity from a service academy. So you could see on the right the list of senior military colleges, but these students will be wearing uniforms to class. They'll be living in dorms with other cadets. They are going to be developing their leadership, and many schools like Texas A&M, really well known for the Corps of Cadets. Some people in there do not want to become officers. They want to get that leadership and camaraderie experience. So if you wanted to become an officer, you would also be in ROTC as well at these schools. And in some cases, that could give you preferential admission to a school. So kind of to wrap up, we've got 2 slides here with our final takeaway tips. So for one, as Scott said, this is a lengthy application process. Start early. We know that it's a whole person, so make sure you're developing yourself in a lot of different ways. Character, moral background, integrity is everything in the officer corps and in the military. Again, have your best academics, your best test scores. So the Academy's super score. So while I normally don't encourage people to take multiple versions of the SAT or ACT, there are students with the Academies that may test 3, 4, or 5 times to get their goal. Again, make sure you are a scholar athlete, make sure you're physically and medically qualified, and then also find out what makes you different. So when you go to your interviews, which most academies require, and when you write your essays, make sure you're talking about, that you speak Farsi at home and that you care for your elderly grandmother and that, you work on your family farm, in addition to those other things, because that really matters. We want to have people with different life experiences, whether it's living and working abroad or travel or unique volunteer opportunities. And then lastly, as we talked about, try to get experience in military things, read books, informational interview, go to summer programs, talk to academy people, go to these military events. All of that is demonstrating interest. It's showing love to the military and your goal of becoming an officer. So focus on that. Communication skills, this is a place you can really help your students. They really need to know how to informational interview and be a strong interviewer. And so when they text and email and communicate, talk to them about the importance of being professional. And then again, start early, as we've said throughout there. And in the military, we say early is on time is late. So work your way back from those deadlines. I've always heard the Army say, if you're going to be late, don't come to the party. And so I don't know about that, Scott, but every academy is going to be competitive. But, most people get in on their second try. So when Scott talked about enroll in ROTC or be willing to go to a preparatory school or maybe go into the reserves, different things like that, you will be evaluated on what your backup plan is. So make sure your students are doing their research and have that interest in that.
Before I get into resources, I want to emphasize what Lisa has brought up about planning ahead and backup plans. So let's say your academy is your number one, but the ROTC is just as an equal amazing experience, but there's a whole application process. And then the return on investment of all that work for all those applications is basically a fully funded, wonderful educational experience. However, if the academy, you don't make it, the ROTC scholarship, you don't make it, you can still apply to a college with an ROTC program and basically walk on to that program and try it out. And I've had students who walked on as freshmen, and when they were sophomores, they ended up earning a 3-year ROTC scholarship for the rest of their educational experience at that university, and then went on to be commissioned in the military and do great things. So what's exciting, this whole process, one of the best days that Lisa and I have every year is when we interview these students who are interested in serving our great nation and attending an academy or ROTC, because they are just so wonderful as human beings, as leaders, as peers. And it's just an exciting to see our youth and where they are, and it just gives us great comfort knowing about these young men and women who are ready to serve our great nation. So these resources, every one of the academies has a great website, and they spell things out for you. They're very structured. Here's step 1, 2, 3, 4. All the ROTC programs have the same type information on their websites. But that last bullet there, the local representative, is such an important part of this whole process for the student, the young 9th, 10th grader who's thinking about this and having a conversation with that representative. And that representative can kind of mentor the student and the family. I've seen them invite the student and their parents into their home, show them videos, talk about the experience. And I've seen those same representatives go to the students' high school athletic competitions. So there's a really great personal relationship that can be established by reaching out to these people. And they also have some great sound advice and answer all your questions by picking up the phone. How to reach us right there. If you have any questions, we've covered a lot. It is a lot, but it's all worthwhile. It's so exciting. And I'm so glad that Lisa and I could chat with you today about this. But if you have other questions, don't hesitate to send us an email, and we'll be glad to get back with you. And
thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.